All right, welcome to episode 59 of the critically acclaimed PoddyC Podcast. I'm your host, Dratnos, joined by Limit Liquid Maximum.
Who are we critically acclaimed? Are you just going to ignore Dorki, by the way?
Also joined by Dorki. I have less titles for him, a less obnoxious introduction available. So.
Wait, what critic acclaimed us?
Well, the people in the comments, they liked last week's episode. They thought it was a good one, which was crazy because,
last previous episode, they were like, we want to burn Max alive.
Well, they can say that they still like the episode, it turns out, sometimes. Which
Wait, was that the last episode?
That was 2 episodes ago when Max
they wanted to burn me alive.
Max
Every
was trying
comment
to,
was like, you suck.
Yeah, it was a good time. This week we have a bunch of exciting stuff to talk about, hopefully.
And we are a little delayed. We're a little delayed because of me. Sorry, this would have come out a few days ago, but I was in Vancouver and I told them too late, and we delayed it rather than getting a guest. Which some of you guys from 2 weeks ago are probably like, man, should they have gotten a guest? Because they're like, man, it would have come out on time, and Max wouldn't have been here, so that would have been great.
Yeah, Dorki, you were right about this scaling, by the way, when we had that discussion last week about scaling going up more than usual. It turns out that was it was 25% on top of the usual amount. But then they've eased back off of it this week. They nerfed the scaling back down a bit.
Oh, the Mythic Plus thing?
Yeah, on this week's PTR build. They also buffed the hell out of tank dammy. Oh, wow. 20% tank damage across the board. Let's go.
I think that might have been Dorki-induced.
Maybe.
Yeah. I made my tank video, where I was just talking about tanks and how damage sucks right now and all that. And literally not even within 2 hours, I want to say, the tanks got buffed by roughly 20%.
Ooh.
But so for the scaling part, when you were talking about how they nerfed scaling, they nerfed HP scaling, but they didn't nerf damage scaling. And that is a huge problem, for me at least. I know a lot of people have been like, why are you complaining about this? It's just going to make M+ easier, just do higher key. But that's exactly the problem. It's effectively a 10% damage buff to these keys. And I don't like that whole implication.
Yeah, it depends on how you're looking at it,
surviving
right?
Again.
Because, for any given key level, it's a nerf, right? If you were somebody who was like, I want to do plus 10 keys, this has gotten, your plus 10 keys are now easier as a result. But if you're somebody who's like, I want to push until the keys are hard for me, that level key might have gone up by 1, but now the relative damage is higher than the tankiness of that dungeon, right? So it's kind of moved us back towards the season 1 vibe of the incoming damage being really high and the enemy HP being not as much the hard part of timing a key. Now, I think there was maybe some room to move back in this direction and have it still be okay, because they nerfed a lot of damage, a lot of specific damage of abilities by a lot over the past 2 months of M+ changes. But I agree with you, Dorki. I'm sad to see it move in that direction, even though I think, for most people, the thing that matters is how hard the key level they play at for rewards are, right? There's not a lot of people like you who are pushing as high as it can go. And so that kind of balance between damage and tankiness is a little bit less of a big deal for the people that are more about okay, how hard are plus 7s this season, right? How hard are plus 10s this season?
Yeah, we saw that before.
Yeah, I just don't like that approach from them, because
it's fair.
They could have just nerfed the entire scaling by some percent, right? But instead they chose to only nerf HP scaling, and I don't like that.
Yeah. You were saying that you made your video and then it immediately came out and got made outdated.
The amount of time is interesting, because within 2 hours it is perfectly feasible that someone was watch the video and they're like, you know what, they're right. It took an hour to think about it and then made the change, but it's also so close to the change that you could argue that they were making the change before ever seeing the video, and I don't know which one it is.
Probably
well, we did talk about it for 2 podcast episodes.
Yeah, it's probably, if it was caused by Dorki, I would guess it was more caused by the previous stuff. 2 hours is that's a very quick turnaround to decide to make a change, make the change, get it in, get a post.
Maybe they have noties on. They might have just got the noti, instantly watched it, and then changed it.
They might have rung the bell.
It depends on how big his ego is.
That same thing happened to me, except it was clearly not that, because it was do you know the dinars change where it was data mined that dinars were taken off of the reward track, and that came out on 5 p.m. on a Friday or something. So I immediately made a video It's like, oh no, dinars are gone from the reward track. And then at like 6:30 p.m. on a Friday, we got the a post that was like, hey, we took them out of the reward track. We're gonna put them somewhere in the patch, but not in the reward track anymore. So I had to remake my video.
I wonder how many. That would be a great thing to ask a dev if we could ever get them on the podcast. Is like, how many times were they just in the middle of their work week, a snapshot of a PTR build went out, and a build was not announced, or like a thing was not announced to be changed, but was just data mined to be changed before they could explain themselves, and then they had to panic make a post explaining that actually, wait, dinars are going to be in the patch just somewhere else because that information got like sent out into the public when they were not like exactly preparing for it.
Yeah. I wonder how often that's happened. I wonder how much like hatred there is towards the data mining sites, mostly Wowhead, right? For like Insta putting up those data mining changes and like having people that are good enough at sorting through it to quickly identify like, oh, this is missing now from this build, and then like make an article about it.
I don't even know how people read those things. Like one of my main things of stream content is like going through posted changes and talking about what that has to do for the game and stuff like that. But like reading the Wowhead like data dump version of it, where there's just like 10 lines that are all saying the same thing and you have to try to like decipher what exactly that means, I've just stopped reading those. Those are unreadable to me. I have to read like the text from Blizzard, because at least that's their stated goals and changes, and it's just, I don't know, not impossible to read, and at least it means that's what they're actually trying to do.
Yeah, I also have I've stopped basically ever making videos using those data mined posts because it is tough to read. But they do have I don't know, they have like sometimes they'll make a post of it where like this with the dinars thing where they made a specific post that was like, here's actually what is now missing and here's what it means. So yeah. Also the Season of Discovery Mythic Race World First is up. The first Mythic difficulty is not actually Mythic, but there's like they made Naxxramas have like 4 hard modes, and if you have all 4 of them on, they're counting it as Mythic on like Warcraft logs and stuff.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and this was like actually took days to get killed. The last 3 bosses. What? Yeah,
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
They'd never been done before, obviously, right? Like this is they've got these like Season of Discovery hard modes and stuff.
Well, I mean, that all of that sounds really cool, and I haven't heard anything about it, but I also wonder if people are happy about that, because like they're getting extra content, but also I know something that people like about Classic, and Season of Discovery is a different take on Classic, but I think it includes a lot of the same people, is a lot of them like the fact that they can log in, no matter how good you are, you can kill a boss easily and then get the loot from it and then move on. And that's as kind of like a duality to retail. It's like the opposite of that. So I wonder if really difficult hard content, because like you guys talked about earlier about Mythic Plus, you're like, sometimes what Mythic Plus is to people is the level in which you get the highest loot. And there's been patches where they haven't actually made Mythic Plus harder. They just simply gave you a higher tier of loot to be possible at a higher level. And then people are like, Mythic Plus is way harder now because the thing they felt like they had to do was just higher by increasing rewards. So like if you're a Season of Discovery player, now that you know maybe the best loot comes from these hard modes or something, I don't know if there's loot related to it at all, but like now you feel like you have to do this thing, then maybe people wouldn't actually like that.
It's actually exactly that. So as far as I know, I don't know if this has changed with how hard mode works in SOD, but you don't actually get higher item level gear from hard mode. Hard mode is just giving more rewards.
Like more
as in, like, more drops.
Okay, yeah.
Oh. I mean, that's kind of the same thing. Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, it's basically not like, like imagine if M plus you could just farm. Well, actually, maybe that's not the best example.
I mean, Mythic Plus kind of works like that, right? The higher key level you do, isn't it the more items that drop at the end? Or it used to be.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's literally
but like,
thing.
people are not going to go beyond a 10, right? Like you could just do a plus 18 and get more pieces of loot.
Yeah, but if you did a 22 and it started natty dropping myth track items, then like that would be.
Yeah, it would have to be. It would have to be better, like actually better gear rather than more gear.
Yeah,
it is sick to like look at these logs though, and it's like tanks, rogue, shaman, warlock, and you're like,
oh wow, that is so
poggers. Healers, 3 mages, and 5 priests.
So
crazy.
Maybe the reason I haven't heard about this is number 1, I've just been disconnected as fuck. But at least from Classic. Number 2 is Season of Discovery, as far as I can tell, was like massive, like right after BlizzCon. this is Classic Plus, or this is the bridge to Classic Plus, and people are super into it. And then it seems like after every season, it's just been absolutely plummeting in the amount of people playing it.
Yep.
So maybe it's more like, I wonder what the reaction would have been when this was still the thing.
Yeah.
And they tried this, because like 2 days of like Race to World First hard mode of a thing, obviously that's going after my own heart, right? I love hard raid content that takes a while to figure out. I don't know if everyone loves that. I love that. That's really cool. But I really wonder how negative of an experience that would have been, because I just don't know who's still playing Season of Discovery. Was it streamed? Was it a big stream thing?
I don't think so. No, I do think that the player base has shrunk precipitously in Season of Discovery. I think that a lot of the excitement about SOD was like level 1 through 20 and like finding your first couple of runes and then maybe doing the like Black Fathom Deeps raid in phase 1 of it, and then I think like phases 2 and 3 were giga flops and they lost a lot of the player base. And I think recently as well, even though I do think the max level stuff, they've been doing more cool stuff, and the stuff they've done with Naxxramas like looks sick. It seems like they've been really cooking with it. I just don't think like the player base is there, and it's overlapped with, I think, a lot of the people that maybe could have been brought back have been watching, OnlyFangz Molten Core Hardcore Classic or doing that kind of stuff instead, because that's been the big thing the past 2 months there.
Yeah, I think that's actually the bigger part. Like, I'm pretty sure Classic Hardcore kind of washed away a lot of SOD, but I did hear a lot of positivity.
Yeah, I do think it's really cool. Like, just looking at it, it looks really cool. The stuff they've done with the last few, like the end game raids of vanilla.
Yeah, the Karazhan Crypts, like I heard that's pretty cool.
I like sick.
Yeah, but no one's playing it. That's see, yeah. Man, where do you think they go from here? Like, where do you? So you have like these things that you almost can't even control. Like the whole, there is a hardcore mode, and streamers are going to create this thing around it. Blizzard has very little control over that. That's like a thing entirely made by the community. So like, if you're a Blizzard developer and you're trying to give people a toolbox of like things to play with, or a sandbox to do whatever they want, like, where do you go from Season of Discovery? Like, I feel like a year or two ago, you would have seen the first season thing of Season of Discovery, and you're like, okay, we want to put all of our eggs in this basket. We need to create new classic content. But now, if you're having a meeting, is that the same conclusion you come to? It's kind of hard to... I don't know what they do. I feel like most other new things, you'd feel like, oh, they'd be new initially, and then they'd maybe be a flash in the pan and go away. Or how much new can you go before it's getting away from the fact that it's classic, and like, how is anything that's new just not worse retail,
I think it's hardcore. I think hardcore is the key, because I mean, it's been going so strong. This has to be like the biggest run of hardcore since hardcore came out. In fact, I don't know if you guys have seen.
Yeah, but that has an endpoint.
That what do you do
so, yeah,
to make more hardcore stuff, right? Because like, I mean, hardcore, they need to extend it to TBC. Is sick, but to extend it to TBC, but after Molten Core, there's like 5 more raids that they have, and each time you do a raid, you lose like 10 characters that have taken 400 hours to get to that point, right? Like,
well, no, but TBC would be very different. I think it would honestly be harder for the players right now to get to BWL than it would be for them to get into TBC.
Okay,
because TBC changes the journey entirely, right? Like, that's when leveling became easier. Classes had different tools.
That's true. Yeah, I mean,
they did say specifically
TBC,
they weren't going to do TBC, but I think they'll change their minds.
Well, I mean, even if because you could do a streamer before there was official hardcore, and WoW, there was like just add-ons that did it, right? So like, you could do anything, and I don't like Blizzard support it, but you don't need Blizzard support. This is still like a community thing. Like right now, okay, would hardcore? Let's just do the most extreme version of the argument. Would hardcore? What's this expansion called? The War Within. Be interesting at all? The answer is no, right? This doesn't really make sense. Like, pushing Mythic Plus, the whole concept of the game, it just totally doesn't work. And leveling's not a thing, all of it. So somewhere along the road between Classic and now, it would not be interesting to do hardcore. So the whole
it's Kata where it would stop being anything.
Even Wrath.
I would go back even.
Yeah, I'd go. I don't know if I mean, this is, we're not Classic people, so we probably don't have the best takes on this, but I think
hardcore TBC, where you can make level 58 guys to start, right? And you can just like start.
I don't think we need to.
I feel like the problem with making hardcore TBC is like the player base just already gets funneled down so much, even leveling to 60. It's sort of like designing WoW like a new content that's only on Mythic, in terms of like such a small set of your player base even will get to that point. Like you make hardcore TBC, there's a bunch of people who've played hardcore that just never get past like level 30 or anything like that, right?
Well, I wonder what Blizzard thinks about hardcore for a few reasons. So, number one, I think hardcore is much more watched than it is played. And as far as like keeping subscriptions updated, which is a huge thing of why Classic has ever existed in the first place, I don't know if it's actually doing that, but it is probably doing a good job of keeping Warcraft relevant in like the zeitgeist of gaming, right? Which is important.
Yep.
But I also wonder, like, if hardcore is taking away interest, like, for example, if you're Blizzard, would you rather all of this hype exist but be for the thing they're actively making in Season of Discovery? The answer is definitely yes. Like, you have this community thing that's super popular, but it taking away focus from the things you're actually doing, you're probably sitting there like the Homelander meme when you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, you know, like, this is good. But really, it's like, it's not good because of anything you're doing other than having a baseline game that people can play and apply themselves to. And you got to be happy that there's this many people that care about it. But also, I think we saw this with hardcore before. This time it's way longer than before, and it's been really popular. But also, it does just have an endpoint. There's only a certain amount of times you can do like hardcore classic before it's just kind of something you've done. You know, it doesn't. There's not new things being created for it. And going through the expansions, I'm not sure would work. I just like 2 years from now, I would just love to know what the history of hardcore classic was. If it gets bigger than this, or if it kind of falls off and they run out of things to do. You know.
I would say two things. One is I don't think Blizzard actually cares as long as. So you're saying how they would prefer if it was the attention was on SOD, right? Because they're very actively working towards it and making it. But I don't know how much that actually matters. I think it's like as long as Blizzard is constantly coming out with stuff and it's keeping players interested, whether it's hardcore and you don't have to put a lot of effort into it. Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of players who just watch people play and be like, oh man, like I want to do this myself. Because going to the second point, we've said that about Classic when it first came out back in 2019. It's like, all right, I mean, it's already ran its course, right? Like,
yeah,
Classic's just gonna be done in like a year. But here we are in 2025, and they've ran it like 5 times already, and people are still playing it. Like, I think as long as they continue to come out with fresh servers every so often, kind of like a seasonal game, right? It's just a seasonal hardcore server where they'll have the OnlyFangz guys come back and all the players who were interested.
It's entirely dependent on that, though. That's the thing. Like you're saying, like they've kept re-releasing it. I don't think if like OnlyFangz happened, I think the whole re-releasing of servers would have been kind of a dud. But maybe that's a weird thing to say because it did happen.
It did happen, yeah.
And maybe the reason it happened is because people were fiending for it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, give it like 2 years, right? Like, give it 2 years time. Not even 2 years. Let's say, like, give it like 1 year, and I'm sure players would be itching to play hardcore WoW again. That's how it always goes. I'm pretty sure I've asked Grau before. It's like, are you gonna play hardcore when it comes back in? He's like, I don't know how much I'm gonna be interested in doing.
And then it just changes over time.
Yeah, and then now he's like balls deep into this. Like, he's been gaming hardcore hard.
Yeah, it's like ARPG too. Sorry.
Yeah,
go,
exactly.
Finish your thought, Dorki. I was gonna fucking cut you off again. I don't want to get yelled at.
Yeah, you do not want to get yelled at.
Or burned alive.
I think real quick.
Yeah, it reminds me of you and playing the MDI, Dorki. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Kind of like that.
2 weeks out, it's like, yep, log in. Somebody who's you know, got some decent IO asked me to be on their team. I'm setting up a character. Here we go.
Or playing Diablo, right? Like,
true.
New Diablo season comes out, you're fucking all the way into it 4 or 5 days, and you're like, man, I'm so done with Diablo. And then a week from later, you're like, I'm still so done with Diablo. But seasons come out every 3 months, and every time they come around, you're like, all right, I'm down. Let's go for a few days, right? So that could, and with something that has as much of a nostalgia bank as Classic has, there will probably be an infinite. Like, I could see in 20 years a decent amount of people getting hyped to play Classic WoW, like, unironically. It's just one of those things. I do think
the size of OnlyFangz this time around is going to be rare, though. Like, you know, getting like T1.
Oh, I actually feel the complete opposite. Really.
You think it'll be bigger next?
I was thinking because like all these streamers saw like, wait, this event was massive. Like, I'm pretty sure phase 3 there's gonna be like even more people interested in trying to get in on this. And also they've been coming up with like different ideas. They're like thinking of maybe we do Alliance versus Horde. Like, maybe we'll have like Tyler 1 lead the Alliance next time, and Soda Poppin can lead the Horde. Like, you know, there's just like so many different possibilities of making it fun and interesting to watch.
I know what
to be fair, Soda Poppin is like literally the king of content.
Yeah, I mean,
He's like, I remember OG Soda Poppin'. Holy moly!
It's sort of dependent on them still all wanting to do it again. My theory of the case is that there's not going to be like an infinite desire. Like you play a few months of Hardcore Classic and you're having a good time, but then you kind of exhausted your interest in doing that for the next few years. And then like a few years later, you look at it again and there's another, fresh release wave or something. And you're like, let's get the band back together. But I feel like you're going to have people burning out if you do it too close to each other in time.
Yeah. I agree with that.
They you know what they need to do? They need to, the people who are in charge of OnlyFangz at the top, they need to hire writers.
Oh, hell yeah.
Just like most reality TV, which OnlyFangz is, as Josh Strife-Hayes put it, Jersey Shore for terminally online people. Most reality shows have, drama would occur anyway, but they have writers that push people in certain directions, and they definitely manufacture content by a few different, things. And I think OnlyFangz having that on top of it, just making sure there's always something happening. It kind of happened naturally this time, but it could just be even better. I think it could work. Get some, I don't know who you could get to write to OnlyFangz, but there's a world where it's like, this happen and have this happen. Like you could have, like the duels that happened and the drama that people actually cared about. You could manufacture so much of that.
You got to get the writers from that Spanish reality show. You guys been seeing the clips from that show?
Oh my God, yes.
On Twitter. Yeah.
The what's the guy's name? Montoya.
Yeah.
Por favor. Yeah, that shit.
Por favor.
That was a crazy video to watch. I was like watching halfway through and I'm like, okay, I've seen this before. And then they showed the like clapping. And it's like, dude, they would never show this on like Netflix. This is man, there's so many people on the podcast are probably confused right now, unless they have X the Everything app. But it is a wild reality show. Spanish. Is it currently going, or is it like old clips?
I think it's currently going because there have been follow-up clips that have gotten a little bit less, reach that have been posted in the following weeks. So
yeah, it's a crazy concept. They basically are either in predefined relationships or they're getting in relationships while on this island or whatever, like most dating shows. But then like anytime someone is hooking up with someone else while in a relationship or whatever, they make the other person watch it on a TV and it's like being recorded. It's like torture, right? And it's just being filmed. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, and apparently it is like largely scripted. So
almost all reality shows are scripted. Yeah, almost all reality show. If you think that's just happening naturally, you've been duped. It wouldn't be interesting enough.
Is that true? I don't believe it. You're telling me WWE is fake?
Some of them, not WWE, but like some of them, they'll just like splice around the footage.
Okay, they'll have WWE's fake, by the way. But like
they'll have you for like a week or something, like Survivor or whatever. They'll have you for like a week on the island or whatever, and then they'll splice around the footage and make it seem like stuff was happening that wasn't happening, and there's beefs that weren't there or whatever to try and make it interesting.
Yeah, the editing does a lot in those shows. Yeah, they just have an infinite amount of footage, and you can just keep going. Like basically a reaction could have been nothing, but like in an editing thing, if you keep playing suspenseful music and showing someone like kind of ominously looking at the ground, you can kind of imply that they're like heavily deep in thought about this thing that's happening, but like none of that existed.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, speaking of Spanish, did you guys see there's a Spanish OnlyFangz too? They got a bunch of big Spanish streamers.
That's smart.
I didn't see that. That's sick though.
That is sick.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. But yeah, TGP this weekend. I gotta say, this might be the least interesting TGP I've seen to date.
Damn.
No.
I hate to say it, man.
That's tough.
It's cause I don't know what it is. Is it because of the release timing? Well, not really release timing, but like
so this
of, like
season,
when the tournament happened.
We had TGP, and it's like 2 weeks before the end of the season now. And then like at the start of the season, we had MDI, and it was like 2 weeks into the season. And so you've got this kind of problem where I think maybe the MDI was like too early for people because a lot of people were just like still busy with their own stuff, right? And then TGP is too late, where the patch hype cycle is kind of over. Everybody's getting ready for the next patch. Also, if you're like a Race World First player, MDI was like right after you'd just been playing WoW nonstop for a month. And if you're like a top 100 player, you're still progressing even during where we had MDI this time around. And then TGP is like during PTR testing for the next season and, conserving your energy so that you'll be able to play for a month straight soon. So, yeah, it would have been kind of more convenient if they'd been more in the middle of the season, but Christmas was then. I don't know. I definitely do think timing was somewhat awkward. It didn't help us. Dude, it ran right at the same time as the OnlyFangz raids, like 2 out of the 3 group weekends or 2 out of the 3 TGP
that was
weekends.
bad.
That was tough.
Well,
Yeah, they should have done the opposite, in my opinion. Like, they should have had TGP at the beginning of the season, so that it's
MDI
not
at the
as
end.
figured out, and then MDI at the end, because like MDI is its own thing, right? It's not really as solved.
well, I think in general, this patch, retail viewership and retail player base, I think, is pretty accurate. Like when your viewer count for retail is up or down, it is because more or less people are playing it. And I think the viewership for retail and also just in general, I think player base has been more of a fall off. It feels like people quit earlier. Dorki, you gave an anecdote to this. Like people quit earlier in this patch than they normally do. And if you're running a tournament when most people have stopped playing, I think there's just generally going to be less interest. Like with this TGP, like you're just not going to have as many people super into it. But I don't know how much of that is driven by the OnlyFangz thing. But it definitely. I mean, I went live today to just talk about some random shit, and I didn't even know it was day 3. It was the finals of the TGP. I had no idea. No clue. I had no clue it was even happening. I didn't watch a second of the TGP this weekend until I tuned in with like an hour left in the finals or something.
Yeah, it also just sucked because this is the first TGP without affixes. I think affixes actually make the TGP more interesting to watch, and just like watching the exact same shit every weekend kind of sucked. And it just the dungeons were way more figured out than normal. That's partially because of the affixes and partially because of how much people have been gaming these dungeons on live. Like, I honestly didn't see anything really special from live keys to TGP, and that's probably the first time that has ever happened in a TGP. So it was kind of lame to watch from a viewer perspective.
Yeah, it's tough as well. Like, there were some keys that were done that hadn't been done on live, but it was only a few of them, and it was only +1 level, right? Like it's not like some of the TGPs where it's like, oh wow, they're doing these keys way higher than they can do on live. I think partially just because the lack of affixes and the fact that people have avoidance on live and stuff has let the live keys get pushed up, pretty damn high already, and it's the end of the season as well. So
why do they not let you have tertiaries on the tournament realm exactly?
it's tough because like you're gonna let people put tertiaries on every piece of gear because then they're gonna be like way better than on live.
Yeah, but it's a turn. Who cares? Everyone has the same thing, and then you can. I mean, I guess you're trying to make it more relatable.
Yeah,
For live keys, but at the same time, you want to show things that haven't been done before. But I feel like people on live all have pretty close to BIS and pretty close to max avoidance. So why would you just remove the avoidance from the tournament realm version? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's a common discussion point, but I don't know. They don't seem to be super interested in changing that.
Okay.
I do think, especially if we keep doing this without affixes, it would probably make sense to, to make it so that there's a bit more of a chance that it goes to a higher level than on live. Although then maybe people would complain that like, oh, these people have all this extra avoidance, so it's not like live, right?
Is no affixes still a W?
I think so. I think it's W for like
Overall,
actually
yeah.
pushing the keys.
Overall, it's probably a W still. I mean, nobody's really gonna like argue to bring back Sanguine and all that.
Certainly. The question is like these
But,
new Xalatath affixes, are they more fun than no
Yeah.
affixes? Or would they be more fun in push keys than no affixes?
I'll be
Don't
honest,
think
it's been
so.
so long since I've done a key with these affixes that I actually don't even know.
Don't
Yeah, like I do want to say it's become a lot more seasonal than ever before. I don't know if season 2 will change, if it'll like fix that feeling of it becoming a little bit less seasonal. But right now, it feels like everyone's just kind of playing for 2 months, and they're having a good 2 months too. It's not like people are having a terrible time
This
those
is the
2
way.
months. They're probably like they're like having a really good 2 months. But after those 2 months, it's like, all right, I mean, what more is there really to
I
do?
mean, I
Not
don't
really.
think if you're gonna go and like look into the future, are people gonna play games more or less seasonally? The answer is more, because every game that commits to a seasonal model has more of a pop off at the beginning, but less over time. But you can like what you're gonna get with that like initial release of content. So like I could see gamers in 10 years like rotating between a bunch of different seasonal games and always playing something when it's hot and everyone else is playing it and there's new content, rather than the old school model which WoW players have been addicted to forever, which is like I have this one game that I play all year. And the more things shift away from that, WoW is going to feel a little bit different, specifically Mythic Plus. But I mean, this is what I've been doing this in WoW forever. This is the GOAT method. Like playing WoW for 2 months and then stopping for the season is sick. That is the way to do it.
Sick. I don't know if I'd be able to do it personally.
What, just as like I think Mythic Plus. I mean, Mythic Plus was almost created for the season long WoW player. That is exactly the purpose. So I would feel most Mythic Plusers are like, I want to play the whole season because that's like kind of what you're signed up for. There's nothing different from the first 2 weeks than the last 2 weeks, really. You just have more gear.
For most WoW players, I would say like WoW players are exclusively WoW players. I don't see any other game that has like such a player base like this. And I think it's because WoW has always kept its players for literally ever. I'm pretty sure there's a ton of people who have been subscribed since day one of World of Warcraft.
Yep.
Yeah,
even if they don't really play the game.
Yeah.
And
I think League is kind of similar. Like I know a lot of League players that are like League only players. It's just an old, really popular game that's been around and maintained relevancy. If you put all those things together, you're going to have a lot of people that are like main gaming it, and that's their only game.
Yeah, for me personally, I have a really hard time staying connected to a game if I'm like not playing it for at least once a week. If I'm not like at least playing the game once a week, I easily lose interest and I move on to different things.
Have you been playing retail once a week?
No, but if I wasn't a World of Warcraft streamer, if I like wasn't invested in World of Warcraft, I probably would have like gone off and playing something else.
So in this season, is that new for you? Not playing this late? Okay, so do you feel just as more or less excited for season 2 then? Because of that.
Ooh, okay. That's actually, well, my excitement for a patch has never really been very not to sound like I'm dooming, by the way. Like everyone's probably gonna like see this as like I'm dooming, but I swear I'm not. It's just I find it really hard to be excited for a WoW patch nowadays. Like I obviously look forward to having new content, like, and I want new content, but I'm not like, oh shit, like I'm hyped for this. I'm only gonna ever really get hyped for either new expansions or new patches if they come out with something big and different. Because it's just super formulaic now. Like I know exactly what to expect. I know it's just gonna be a new raid. I'm just gonna like do the new M+ dungeons. That's about it, right? Like I don't really care about the new zone in particular. It's gonna be nice and all. The drive is gonna be cool to mess around with, but there's nothing that gets some type of excitement going on.
If they, you don't get the like, oh, there's a new game coming with new stuff that I'm
it doesn't feel like excitement. If I saw Elden Ring DLC coming out, then I'm like actively feeling hyped, right? I'm like, oh shit, I'm super excited for this.
Speaking of which, Elden
I don't really
Ring
get excited
Fortnite
for a new patch.
is in like 2 months or 3 months. It's crazy.
Of a Night Rain?
Yeah.
I haven't. Have you guys seen anything about that game?
I've just seen Elden Ring, like Risk of Rain, Fortnite, some kind of unholy mix of those games.
So weird. But like, also, I trust that company enough to make it.
I am in 100%.
No matter what.
Blindly gonna try it for sure. Yeah, like I'm sold.
Before changing that, I wonder if that's like a Mythic Plus, because like if a Mythic Pluser, if a new season of dungeons, even though you get a full set of new dungeons, and in this season a literal new dungeon, it kind of just feels like the map pool is going to be okay every season no matter what. And yes, it's going to be new and there's an initial learning curve, but you're not like dying to learn it. What you like about Mythic Plus is the replayability, and the replayability exists kind of all year round. Where like as raiders, I think you look forward to a new patch because you get a sick new raid. You get to do the progression thing again. That's the thing of what a lot of raiders play the game for, is that feeling of progression with their guild. And then you do it and then it's over. And that is like the thing you look forward to. So like I'm always hyped for patches because it's just like there's something new to do now. We've been doing this boring farm thing for multiple months. I want to do the real thing again. Right? But it's interesting as a Mythic Pluser, you don't have that feeling much. I wonder if it's consistent across a lot of people who do that mode.
I know some M+ers are pretty hyped for this new patch because it's just like okay, there's a new set of dungeons coming. They look maybe better than the season 1 dungeons. The scaling and, meta changes all look like they're going to be better than season 1. Because I think a lot of people were down on season 1 of War Within for class balance reasons, relative difficulty of M+ reasons, dungeon pool, and like how dungeons are difficult reasons. And I think there are some people that are hyped because they think some combination of those things are getting better next season. And they're just excited about moving to a better state of the game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely on that side of.
But it's different kind of hype, rather. Like, it's not.
Yeah,
like
it's
the
not
new game
hype. It's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, thank God, like this is getting fixed and all that. But like for me, excitement would be, say, class reworks, right? Like I want to see my classes all playing differently. That would be fun. Or I want to see them experimenting. Maybe they come out with like a new 10-man raid, 3-boss raid, something like that, right? Like that would be super exciting. Or maybe player housing comes out next patch. Like that's easily going to be exciting. I don't know. Like what else is there? It just has to be something that's like outside of the usual formula.
Yeah, you're kind of like, I think there are a lot of people, right? Like probably the majority of WoW players that's true for, right? Where it's like you're hyped. There may be people that are hyped for the new season because like they like the flavor of Undermine and they like the look of the look and flavor of the new raid and dungeon and stuff. But like, I do think there's a lot of people for whom new content needs to actually be like different rather than just new dungeons, new raid, to actually hype them up. I think that's part of why the new expansion is a bigger thing than a new patch in terms of like the playership spike.
Right. This just feels like an extension of season 1.
Yeah. I'm hyped though. I think the raid looks sick and the dungeons look sick, and like for me that's enough to be pretty hyped, even though I'm not hyped for the tier sets mostly, especially as a tank. That's something that often I get hyped for is like, oh man, looks like there's gonna be some sick new builds or something, but this time around, man, all the tank tier sets seem so weak, sad. Unfun.
I think that's actually exactly what it is. Because like our classes are gonna play the same from season 1 to season 2, and it's because of the tier set, right?
Yeah.
And but before, when there was borrowed power, that's also a huge part of it. Like in BFA, you would look forward to each new patch because you're getting something new to play with. Like when you're getting essences, that was really cool. Or when you're getting corruption, that was really cool.
Yeah, they've only successfully. That's actually a good point. When people talk about borrowed power, they kind of talk about everything the same. Like a late expansion edition is talked about the same as the ones were at the beginning. But they were actually a lot more successful on ones later in the expansion, and as far as implementing them and having them be good versus at the beginning. And I wonder if you could have. We've talked about this before, right? I wonder if you could do a mix. You do the like evergreen. Well, also you don't even know if you're going to continue getting expansions like this. They said Dragonflight was going to be an evergreen. I don't think they're going to do evergreen expansions forever. Like they needed to take a break from borrowed power and rebuild the base game, which has been kind of the point of the last 2 expansions. But at some point, I think there could be. Oh, there's this new thing in the patch that's going to be crazy, an essence or a corruption or something. And I think there's a world where you do that and it doesn't suck,
Yeah.
I just don't think your whole expansion should be defined by it.
Yeah. They just need something to change up how your class plays, because I didn't think this was like going to be a problem before, as long as your class played well. But I used to always look forward to classes playing differently. You remember how like every expansion classes would drastically change? Like Boomkin, for example. They've had 10 different iterations of Eclipse.
Yeah.
And that was like always something to look forward to in new expansions. But you don't really get that nowadays.
Yeah, I think especially since Dragonflight, like the difference in how a class plays from Dragonflight to War Within has got to be like the smallest that it's ever been, right? Like there's a few specs where it's like, oh, we got a cool new reworked class tree. Like, oh yeah, monks, we can, like, our class tree is less annoying now and we can double jump after we roll, and like that's cool. But that's on the bigger end of changes, and it's not a big change. Like for the most part, the rotations are the same that they've been for the past few years now, which, if they're in a good state, that's good. And to some extent, it's like it would be hard for them to change it because there's the whole talent tree that, like, they spend so much time getting it into a good state. If you did a big rework to a class or spec, that would be such a huge undertaking to, like, go back to untested, unbalanced talents again.
Well, how do you do this consistently without, like, because I think there's also people on the other side of it where like their class keeps changing and it's super annoying. And for example, if you ever get to a point where you fucking love the way your class plays, you have a bunch of interesting talent options, you're good at a lot of different stuff, it's fun. Do you really want your class to change every patch? Then it's kind of like, I kind of like what I'm having. So is it like change for the sake of just change, but also like how many classes are actually like in this perfectly really good spot? I think tier sets were supposed to do this. This patch with the theme of tier sets is kind of tier set kind of does the same thing, which is certainly going to make the game feel less different. But also tier sets being super polarizing is polarizing, right? It can be really bad or really good. And some patches it's nothing, and they make 39 tier sets. There's not going to be 39 bangers.
I do think I think the jackpot ones look really fun to play. So that's range DPS. I just think, man, the luck of the draw tank set bonuses seems so as a tank man, I'm not happy about this.
I think the issue with luck of the draw is that what they did was they made all of the tank bonuses average or below average. And what's happened historically with tier sets and tanks is one tank will get an absurdly broken, extremely powerful tier set, but all the other tanks don't care because they'll just play that tank because tanks multi-class. So what they've done to tanking and having it be less interesting is just simply make them all the same, whether they're all really good or all really bad. Actually, I think if they were all really good in their own unique way, that would be great because then you could play any tank and they all pop off and are way different. But I think it's just that tank tier sets just have more power than everything else. So you're looking forward to the one that looks like super crazy, but that's just not there.
Yeah. Also, tanky just still kind of stinks. Despite tanks getting roughly 20% damage buff, it still doesn't feel particularly amazing.
Yeah, they were so far
compared
behind.
To Dragonfly tanking.
You buff them by 20% and you're still not doing a lot of damage, but
yeah, it's
at least playable now, right?
Yeah.
All right.
W.
Anybody got any other topicos, or do we want to move on to our Patreon question of the week?
Well, I don't know how much we could talk about it, but I just looked at this up on my stream. We're gonna be Mythic raid difficulty is gonna be available in 2 weeks and 2 days.
Hell yeah!
From right now.
Wait, what? Oh yeah.
16 days.
Wow, dude, they this month doesn't have a lot of days in it. Has anybody ever noticed that? There's less days in February than the other months. That really kind of sneaks up on you when they're doing a March 4th release.
Because I knew March 4th, and I was actually in my head, I was like, oh, yeah, it's 3 weeks from Tuesday. Yeah. And then I just I literally Googled how many days until March 4th on stream. And it was 16 days, and that is so short.
Yeah, we could move to I think it was the French Revolutionary calendar. They had 12 months of 30 days, and then there's a 5-day non-month thing at the end of the year that's just they're all holidays. That could make more sense.
How do you know that? That's just such a random thing to know.
They had
that's all right,
they had 100 minutes in an hour and 100 seconds in a minute and 10 hours in a day, and everybody hated it and they got rid of it after a year. But it was it was one of those things where oh yeah, this makes more sense. But then
it does make more sense.
We like our 24-hour days.
Dude, you know what I said earlier? I said earlier in my stream that I think this raid has a chance to be one of the best raids ever. And then my chat's response was well, you guys always say this. And I was like, you know what? You're kind of right.
Yep.
But the reason,
true.
But the reason that I always say that is I get really excited about some bosses. And then I'm like, that's the reason this is going to be the best raid ever. Because if you think about the best raids in modern WoW, you're they all had some fucking banger bosses, right? But then I've learned that I think trying to think a boss is going to be a banger based on testing is a complete, you're just guessing. Because, they could ruin it. They could make it amazing. It could be the same. You just don't really know. And I think the reason it could be one of the best is, all of the best raids ever. And I used a list of, 4 since MOP. Which, for me, would be Throne of Thunder, Blackrock Foundry, Nighthold. And then I threw in Castle Nathri in there. It's a 4. I think Castle Nathri might be a little bit behind those 3, but also I was thinking about how when most people talk about Classic, it seems like they have crazy rose-tinted nostalgia glasses, and I'm thinking that maybe I have that for MOP and WoD and stuff like that, so maybe Castle Nathri is actually on those levels. It's just more recent. But what do all those things have? They have crazy sick theme. They do have sick bosses. You need sick bosses, but to be one of the best raids ever, you just need to have a crazy aesthetic. And I think this upcoming raid has that. We'd have to see how the bosses pan out, but it has a chance to be that tier purely because it just has probably the best theme. That's subjective, but I think, the best theme in many, many years, if not ever, for an actual patch, not an expansion. So I think it has a chance to be super goated.
Yeah, I mean, there were some raids that were kind of doomed from the start in terms of like, I think Nerebar Palace is a good example of this, or like Uldir. Like these raids are just never going to have themes that match up with the potential of Castle Nathria, right? Like Vampire Castle theme, or this raid, right? Like Goblin Casino raid. You know, that's just...
It has no chance. Even if the bosses are sick, it's just like, think about the majority of players are casual. You don't really care how interesting a raid boss is. Maybe your experience with the raid is literally running through it on LFR or normal, or actually watching videos of the bosses and just being like, oh, this is what the bosses look like. But like, I think a lot of those people love aesthetic and theme, and it's just gonna, this patch is gonna grab you in that way to where you're going to be looking at the raid or the boss in the raid with the rose tinted glasses, because you're gonna see them cast things like the big hit, and the first boss is going to be a car that's shooting motorcycles at you, and that's just fucking cool, you know. And I think that changes so much. I think Castle Nathria, with the same bosses, isn't an all-time top 10 raid if it's not a really cool vampire castle. That's just the way it is. It's just that matters. It's sick. The art team killed it.
Also, like, this is the first time that we've been on our usual thing of like, oh yeah, this could be the best raid ever. But like when we actually tier listed the bosses,
they're all mid.
Yeah, it was like, oh, CC, B.
They're all mid.
You know,
bro, at least right now.
Hear that.
See, that's the thing. But like, there's been bosses I've said were awesome from testing that sucked,
right?
And bosses that were awful in testing that owned. And
discard S tier prediction.
Yeah, but like what I'm saying is, for your raid to be one of the best raids ever, it has to have a 10 out of 10 theme, and then the boss quality purely comes after that. To be the best ever, you need to have good bosses and a good theme. But you could have the best bosses ever, and if your theme isn't this tier, you cannot be one of the best raids ever. It's impossible. All I'm saying is this raid has that, and hopefully the bosses are better than we think they are, and then maybe it has a chance.
I mean, the bosses are like basically like they're less correlated with PTR testing than we'd like them to be. So we don't know much about how good they're actually going to be when they come out, and also the end boss is super important, and we never get to test that. So
yeah, like how much can you tell? Like, think about last raid. Like, I think a lot of people's opinion on the last raid is how difficult it was. How can you possibly tell how hard something is going to be based on testing, right? We basically killed Tindril in testing, and then it was a completely different fight, one of the hardest fights ever.
Kai Veza, I would have been shocked to learn that it was a 300 pull boss after
insane.
testing it.
Yeah, insane. Silken Court was probably the hardest boss ever on testing. Literally the hardest boss we've ever tested, including the end bosses we used to test. And that was, significantly, it's still a hard boss, significantly easier than it looked like it was going to be based on testing. And difficulty matters a lot. And I don't know if that's another thing. I wonder if they're going to go back on the difficulty this raid. It doesn't seem that way. The bosses all seem like the earlier bosses seem a little harder, but like, in the grand scheme of things, they're kind of insignificant. Like bosses 3 and 4 are harder than they were in Nerebar Palace. But it wouldn't be surprising to me if bosses 5 through 8 are a step back from where they were in this previous raid, at least historically. That's just a guess. Who knows? Testing doesn't necessarily tell you that. That's just what I think Blizzard will do.
That's crazy. I'm the complete opposite. I feel like gameplay matters the most.
I agree, gameplay matters the most. I just think it's the thing that we know the least about at this point. Like, we know about the other things,
and those
are really good. And then the gameplay is like, we have no idea from testing, really.
100% positive that the theme is going to be a banger right now. 100% sure. And that is, I don't know how much of the battle, half the battle, but it's a very big contributor as to whether a raid is super sick or not. And the other thing is whether they have sick bosses and the difficulty is good. But the thing is we don't know anything about that. So at least I've learned that I think we know very little about that. Bosses could be sick or amazing. A Guardian of the first ones in Sanctum could have been every bit as good as Sludge Fist if it wasn't extremely fucking easy. Like that's a boss that purely, whether it was memorable, if you kill a boss in one pull, it's not memorable. No matter how cool it was, no matter how clever or cool the mechanics were, if you just kill it in one pull, it doesn't matter enough for you to kill it. The bosses that you kill in Elden Ring that take forever to kill, but once you kill them, you're like, this is the best game of all time. You only feel that way because it took so long to get good enough at that fight to kill it, right? So like, you just don't even know. You don't know how many pulls these bosses are going to take, so it's hard to get attached to them.
Yeah, it just depends on the type of difficulty. Because the type of difficulty where you can't make meaningful progression is always the worst. That's been like the biggest problem of modern raiding. I mean, we've already talked about this before.
Yeah. All right, Patreon time.
All right, this one comes from Civilian Raid Leader. Once again, what are you most looking forward to in 11.1? However, you can't answer for yourself. So Dorki answers for Max, but I guess Max answers for me, and then I answer for Dorki. Okay.
Okay, who wants to go first? Oh, wait, there's more to this. Is there...
Yeah, these are like other questions that I think are...
Let's just do this one first, then.
Yeah, we can do them one at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like Max is the easy one. Like you already said in the episode, it's gonna be the raid. You're gonna be super excited for Race War First when you get a back-to-back win.
Oh, W, love that.
There it is.
Wait. So who answers for?
So you answer for me then, Max, and then I answer
you
for
go for
Dorki.
Dratnos.
Oh, I'm super excited for all of the theme and all of the cool little things I can collect and do. And I'm excited to make a bunch of videos right after they release the information in record speed. And then also, we're going to do the raid with my friends and be very happy. Dratnos he takes everything in. He just fucking loves everything. He's a very positive man, and he enjoys every part of WoW.
That's right, and I'm not really excited for it at all. I could take it or leave it at this point. I'm just I'll be here, I guess, if there's some new dungeons, and I'm probably not going to do MBI unless somebody with a pulse asks me to be on their team, in which case I'll be right there.
God damn it!
I won't do MBI.
Okay, so what am I excited for?
Ask me to do it.
Where's the excitement?
Yeah, I mean that's it.
That's the excitement. That's your excited voice.
And then
that's actually true.
We'll barely miss qualifying to global finals, and try again next season.
Okay,
that's good shit. What was his other thing?
Okay, is lasagna closer to a cake or a pasta?
Pasta, not close.
Yeah. I guess this is one of those
like the layer thing, but like it's just simply pasta.
It's like, is a hot dog a sandwich type question, right? Where it's like there's some technical reason why it's maybe closer to a cake, but obviously it's
pasta and lasagna.
It's got pasta noodles.
If you go to a cake restaurant, they're not going to serve you lasagna. If you go to a pasta restaurant, they're always going to have a lasagna because it's literally made with pasta in between, layered with things. It's not close. It's pasta.
Yeah, that's the same shit. Pasta and
that's such a contrarian, actually take to be like, is lasagna a cake? Like, no, it's just not.
Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite pasta? Homemade or some specific restaurant? Okay.
Rigatoni bolognese.
Okay.
And kind of just in general, but I do often order it on Uber Eats after I play multiple hockey games a night and I'm going home really late. This place is open super late and I can just eat a bunch of food before bed so I don't feel like I'm dying. I won't tell you the name because no free ads.
Yeah, unless. Hit us up.
Yep.
Yeah, all pastas is the same shit, honestly.
All the same?
I know I'm going to piss people off, but homemade, restaurant, it's all the same shit. I mean, it's good either way.
I like a good carbonara.
Wait, so you're saying if you were to get pasta from like a Michelin star restaurant known for hand making their own pasta.
Well, okay, to be fair, I've never had gourmet of pasta, so I can't really comment on that, but I feel like it can't be that much different.
Like the quantity that you'd get from any of those kind of places, you'd get like 4 spoonfuls. When I want pasta, I want
all
like
those.
Bowl.
Okay, this is a misconception. Like nice, great restaurants are not always they give you zero food. It's more likely they're going to give you a full meal. It's just going to be very expensive. At least
but it's going to be like over 10 courses or something, and so like
no, those are tasting menus. That's not a pasta restaurant.
No, yeah, it's going to suck.
You're just a hater. That's not true. I had a great.
Give me a good like $12 carbonara where they give you like it comes in like a stuffed plastic styrofoam container that's like barely able to close. Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what I had recently that was like, I think a great way to answer this question, because I think whenever thinking about people at home pasta, you're kind of thinking of like SpaghettiOs too, just like some basic ass shit.
Oh hell yeah!
I went to a nice restaurant and one of their like specialties was making like their own version of SpaghettiOs, but like bougie, nice restaurant version of it, and it was fucking incredible. It was so good, but also like SpaghettiOs still go so hard. So, just in general. So I think the answer, like pasta is one of those things where you can eat it really cheap and it's great. So,
yeah, agreed.
And then what is the last question? If you were supplied An infinite supply of pasta of your choosing, but you had to retire from the WoW content scene to acquire it. Would you do it? No. I mean, technically, okay. Infinite means you could sell it and basically have an infinite income source of just selling this infinite amount of pasta to all the pasta if you can get enough people to want to buy it to where you would...
As a hack.
Yeah, or you could just solve world hunger, just...
Nah, that's less important. More the personal income side of it. I think it's that, or... But also, like, retire from WoW content. I just do this because I like it. Anyways. Like, I don't... Like, the streaming... Like, just going live, like, once a week and just yapping for a little bit. I fucking love that shit. I want to do this. So, it wouldn't be about the money thing. And you wouldn't want to eat that much pasta. Like, that's like having an infinite Chipotle card. Like, eventually you just hate Chipotle.
Okay.
Oh, dude, nah, never.
Yeah, I take issue with that. It's like, I already could eat Chipotle like 5 days a week. I could do it 7 if it was free.
Ooh, I think if it was 7, I think you'd burn out faster than you'd think.
I don't know.
Nope.
I have a pretty high tolerance for Chipotle.
Yeah, me too, actually.
How about you, Dorki? You quitting streaming for an infinite supply of pasta?
I mean, I'm in the exact same boat as Max. Like, what the hell am I gonna do with an infinite supply of pasta?
All right,
you'd have to learn the supply chain, and like you'd have to make your relations with vendors, and that sounds like work. And streaming is not work. We just yap, and that's great. So bad.
Like, what do you mean? Streaming's the hardest job.
That's true.
You're trying to argue streaming's not hard.
Streaming's so easy.
All right, great question. Thank you, Civilian Raid Leader. Kind of went off the rails a little bit after the start there, but I could tell you're in a bit of a pasta kind of mood.
Yeah, that's a lot of pasta. It's just like they were just thinking about fucking pasta in this episode.
Been there.
I mean, I appreciate it. You're just trying to cook up good podcast content. I love that.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to be it for us this week, unless you are a patron, in which case we're going to chef up some potty teas, some drama time, that kind of stuff. Have some of that coming for you. We'll try and get a little bit of a backlog going to that so that we can have it during the race as well, hopefully. But, no promises. Sometimes things happen, but we'll try our best. We love you. Thanks all for supporting the show. That's it for this week. Adios.